All right, good evening, everyone. Welcome to tonight's talk. Super excited to be with you guys for Armor Up Your Immune System. So I'm just getting settled in with my PowerPoint here, make sure we are good to go and that we got what we need to make it a great evening for you all. So welcome. As I mentioned, excited to be here. This is a topic, obviously, right now is a really important topic because we have so much going on out there with keeping our immune system strong because we want to stay strong throughout this winter time especially. So I'm just going to get that loaded and we should be good to go. All right, so this is Armor Up Your Immune System. The goal here is to give you some resources, whether it's you as an individual or you're looking after your family, to be able to stay healthy this winter and know what to do if you do get sick, to not only get over it more quickly, but to actually come out of it stronger so your immune system is ready to do battle the next time even better. All right. So you might be watching this if you are a family or an individual who does get sick a lot and you're worried that this winter might be one of the worst yet. Or you might be watching this and maybe you don't get sick that often, but you want to really put your resources into armoring up this year because you want to make sure that whether it is a cold or a flu or all the talk around COVID right now, what you can do to stay as strong as possible. Ultimately, what we want to do is make sure you have the resources to feel like you're not just spending your days um, at sick at home or spending your days, if you're all of a sudden you get a call from school, if your kids are actually in school right now saying, hey, your kiddo's got a fever, you got to come run and pick them up. And we want you to be able to spend your days like feeling happy, feeling excited, getting out playing and enjoying and doing what you want to do. So if you don't know me, my name is Dr. Ty. I own Whole Family Chiropractic. I've been a chiropractor for 13 years now, since 2007. And you might be wondering, why does a chiropractor talk about the immune system? It's actually something that we see amazing results with in our office. Our office is over half is families coming in together. We got a parent with their bringing all their kiddos, and what we see over and over and over again is how often families say, you know what? This winter went really well. Or my kiddo, every time they get a cold, it used to just last and last and last. Suddenly their colds aren't lasting very long. And I don't need to go into why that is right now too deeply, but ultimately it's a lot about how your nervous system handles the stress in our world. And right now we're in a lot more stress than usual. So it's something that, because of the results that we get, it's something that I've explored a lot over the years, and I want to share these strategies with you tonight so you can feel empowered yourself, whether it's for you or your kiddos, and be able to, especially if you're watching this or if you see us in the office, a lot of people that we see are a little bit out of the box when it comes to healthcare. Maybe you don't follow the mainstream protocols out there. And as a result, if you're not following mainstream, what happens sometimes is you might be doing something different, and then you've got other people looking at you wondering like, hey, why are you doing that? Or that's not what your neighbor's doing, or your friend down the road, or the other parents at school are doing. So I want to empower you with the choices that you make to actually just be like, hey, here's why I do it this way. All right. Thanks, Jacob. I appreciate your comment. And so for those of you who don't know, we also had a new kiddo recently. So that's been a fun adventure for us. Mason, as you can see, is, let's see, he's going to be 4 months in a week. So that's been, like I said, a good adventure for us. And I'm sorry, I'm just messing with one thing here. And a really good perspective as a parent. I think we all know that until we have kids, things are kind of have theories about parenting and raising kids. And once you actually have a kid, it's a whole different ball game. So anyway, Mason is 4 months and he hasn't hit the going to school phase yet or the daycare phase yet. But I'm excited for when he does that because I know that's going to actually help boost his immune system. So anyway, let's dive in here. So what we're going to cover tonight is, number one, why some people get sick and others don't. Number two, what to do when you get sick. And as I mentioned, not only to get through it more quickly, but most importantly, to actually get your immune system stronger so the next time something comes, you can fight it off even better and actually decrease the amount of time you are sick and decrease the future number of times you get sick. And then number three, how can you strengthen your immune system naturally? And with that, what I'm going to emphasize, and kind of the theme of tonight, is different than what you might be thinking already, right? Because a lot of times when people talk about the immune system, they think, well, I'm just like, what supplements do you take or what foods do you eat? And quite honestly, you can hop on Google right now and type in best foods to boost your immune system and get a list in 15 seconds that you don't really need to spend an hour with me tonight learning that. So I want to, as I said, share some things that are more out of the box to help you feel empowered and some things that you're not going to get just jumping into Google. All right, so number one is a super important concept of why some people get sick and others don't. And this is an ultra important concept right now because what the common theme out there with the COVID situation right now is to avoid germs at all cost, right? You stay home, you stay isolated, you stay distanced, you wash your hands all the time, you wear masks, and the entire emphasis right now is on avoiding the germs. So I want you to think about this for a moment. And I know I can't see you in person, but virtually, raise your hand for me if you've ever had fruit flies show up at home. I know I have. Typically, it tends to be bananas. They tend to maybe ripen a little further than we want, and all of a sudden these pesky little flies are flying around. Now, my question for you then is, which came first? Did you have perfectly normal bananas sitting on your counter and the fruit flies were flying around outside and they said, oh, look, bananas. They flew in, landed, and they made your banana turn rotten or turn extra ripe? Or is it the flip? Did your banana get a little overripe and then the fruit flies appeared? And this is a crucial concept because it's the exact same thing with our body and our immune system. We're led to believe that all the bugs out there are making us sick. In this case, that the fruit flies are making the fruit turn bad. However, most of the time it's the opposite. It's actually a weakened body. It's an overripe fruit, so to speak, that is allowing the bugs to come in and to grow. So I'm going to give you a more of a first-hand example here. So this is a picture of my grandma, and that's on her wedding back, I think around 50, 51, somewhere in that range, and then a more recent picture of myself golfing with my grandparents. But in 1952, if we jump all the way back then, my grandma was diagnosed with polio. She was in a small town in southern Wisconsin, and in the town of Monroe, they had a polio outbreak. So she was the 60th case diagnosed with polio. So she went into the doctor, and the doctor said, all right, you're losing the ability to like move and the sensation and the movement on the left side of your body. We're expecting you're actually going to lose that permanently. And we're also expecting you're going to have a scoliosis. So what we want you to do is come back in 6 weeks, and we're going to fit you for a brace, and we're just kind of going to see how things go. Now, fortunately, in that time, her dad knew about chiropractic. She actually brought her to the Dr. Gonstead, and he started seeing her, started adjusting her over that 6-week period. She went back into the doctor after 6 weeks, and the doc re-x-rayed. They're ready to like fit her for the scoliosis brace, and all of a sudden they look and they say, whoa, wait a minute, your spine's straightened out. That doc calls in 2 other docs, and they're all looking saying, well, you don't need a brace anymore, Helen. You're apparently good to go. Your body somehow cured itself of polio. And at the time, she was kind of like in the corner, too shy to say anything. Her parents are too shy to say anything because chiropractic was so outcast at that time. And this story isn't about how chiropractic helped her, even though that is really cool. And polio is something related to the immune system. I used to think that the adjustments straightened her spine, but I realized the adjustments actually helped her body clear itself of the polio because she got full function back on the left side of her body. To this day, it works fine. But here's the point of that story, is she was describing this to me, and she said, you know what, Ty? The other thing is I had, at that time, 6 siblings. myself and my brother were the only ones in our house that got polio. So her parents and 6 siblings, 8 people in that house, they were all around the same bug, but only 2 got polio. They also have the same genetics for the most part, but only 2 of the 8 got polio. So it wasn't necessarily the bug or the genetics, it was actually what was going on inside their body. And like at that time, my grandma had just started teaching. She had a first month of a new career teaching in, so maybe her body was under extra stress. And so what I want to emphasize is that in that case, there was this outbreak in town, but it didn't necessarily affect everyone. There was another family, she said, at school, there was 5 kids, and one at a time, they'd be gone for a week. Then all of a sudden, they'd come back, and she was talking to the doctor and said, oh yeah, that family, they had a mild case. All the kids had a mild case. And the other thing that got me thinking of, like, wait a minute, if the same polio outbreak is in the town, why are some mild, some don't get it, and some get a severe case? Again, it's a similar polio strain going around, but it's all based on the strength of their immune system internally. Here's another experiment, and this one's a little more direct. And again, to show that what's most important is actually the strength of your body. So this is an experiment they did where they actually took the cold virus and they put it directly in the mucous membrane of a person's nose. So this is out of a book by Deepak Chopra. And the amazing thing is, now think about this for a second, because we've been taught to avoid the virus, avoid the bug. In this case, they said, well, you don't get a choice. You're not going to avoid it. We're going to shove it directly in the mucous membrane of your nose. Guess how many actually came down with a cold? I was shocked when I read this study. It was 1 out of 8. So 12% actually came down with a cold, even though they put the bug right in the mucous membrane, which is what transfers it from the outside to the inside of the body. So there again, the idea is that some get sick and others don't, not because of the amount of bugs that they're around, but based on how strong their body is. And so I'll share one more story and then we'll move into the second point. And this is a story of a woman that saw me in her mid-20s, and she worked at a daycare. So she was around the bugs, she was around the kids that are snotting and spitting and drooling and sneezing and everything's going everywhere. And so every winter, she said, Dr. Ty, I get colds all winter long. I get strep throat many times a year. The doctor said if I keep getting strep throat, I'm going to have my tonsils out, and I'm too busy to have my tonsils out right now. So she started getting adjusted. We had started her in the fall, started going through, we got through the winter into spring. Come springtime, she comes up, she gives me a high five. She goes, Dr. Ty, guess what? I didn't get sick at all this year. The reason being, the only thing she changed was getting adjusted. And again, this isn't because to emphasize chiropractic, even though chiropractic's really cool for the immune system. The point of this story is that she was in the exact same environment, right? So she didn't change, like, I didn't get sick because I stayed away from all the kids and their germs. I was still in that petri dish of daycare, but I didn't get sick because my body was stronger. And the reason I'm drilling this point home is that it's so important, especially right now, to know that the key to you staying healthy is not avoiding the germs, but keeping your body healthy internally. So that's what we're going to talk about next. 2 things. Number 1, as I mentioned, we're going to go into point number 2 is what to do when you do get sick, because quite frankly, yeah, we do get sick, even though we're trying to keep our resilience up so high. But I want you to be able to learn what to do to get sick, to not only get through it more quickly, but then how to get stronger on the other side, because that's going to turn you into some of these examples that I just gave of the person who can be around all the bugs and not keep getting sick. So let's first start then. When we do get sick, what are some of the things that happen? Because quite frankly, it's not fun. Whether you're sick and you feel kind of moody, I know sometimes us guys out there, we have now we're extra ornery or short-tempered or not wanting to really participate or cooperate, or if your kiddo's sick and you just want to love on them and hug them, and it's tough to be uncomfortable. So let's look at then what to do when you get sick based on what your body is trying to do. So picture if your house starts on fire and your smoke alarm goes off. The point of the smoke alarm is not to just annoy you and make you plug your ears. The point of the smoke alarm is not to go up to it with a towel and wave the smoke away. The point of the smoke alarm is to tell you that something's wrong. So it's happening for a reason. Same in our body. So whenever there's something happening in our body, we have to remember that it's there for a reason. And this is one of the keys because, as I said, it's tough. If your kiddo's got a cough, if they've got a fever, if you've got sweats, if you got chills, all these things, they're tough to just like say, okay, we're gonna bear down and go through this. So we're gonna go briefly through what they're meaning and then how you can support your body in the process. So let's start with a cough. Obviously, the cough is there because it's trying to get something out, right? If you have smoke in your lungs that shouldn't be there, you're going to cough to get it out. So a lot of times when we have something come at us, let's say a cold, and it does hit those mucous membranes, something early, step one, the body's going to create a bunch of congestion early because the first line of defense is at the surface. Whenever something gets in our eyes, gets in our nose, gets in our throat, if we can clog it up there, what happens is the body is trying to slow it down. And if you think of like putting a drainer stopper in the tub, it slows the drainage, right? Well, the point is if a bug gets from the surface of our body deeper in, the deeper in it gets, the more havoc it's going to create. So step one is it's going to congest. That's why we get a stuffy nose. That's why we get the swollen sinuses, swollen eyes. Everything builds up because the body's saying, hey, plug all the drain holes right now. Keep it up here. Don't let it drain down. While it's plugging things, it's starting to send extra immune cells to the bloodstream. It's getting extra immune cells there to help attack and fight things off. What happens then is it starts to drain and maybe does get a little deeper, or maybe it's simply the drainage happening. Now you start to get that cough, and it might start kind of ticklish, that dry cough, which is the most annoying one. We want it to be obviously turned into a productive cough because that phlegm, right, when you're coughing out phlegm, that's like what the body has done to quarantine things, quarantine that bug. So now you can cough it up and get it out because the body, if it can get it out, it clears it out more quickly. So the cough, even though it's so annoying, is what your body's trying to do to get things out. So an example here, there was a family that I saw many years ago, and mom came to me one day and she's like, yeah, dad's had this cough for a couple months. And we were talking and seeing what she was doing about it. And she said, well, I'm giving him an essential oil to try to suppress the cough, like in a sense like a cough medicine, but the essential oil version, because she thought, well, maybe if it's the essential oil version, that's going to be more natural. That's going to be healthier for him. Well, we started talking. I said, well, wait a minute. If the cough's there, it's trying to get something out, but you're suppressing it. What do you think's going to happen? It's not going to be able to finish up and do its job. She said, oh, that makes sense. So she took away the essential oil. The cough could intensify, but now actually clear out, and he could get to the other side of it. Let's look at the next piece. As I mentioned, the sore throat. So now, again, this is similar to what we were talking about. We've got the tonsils and adenoids are in the throat. And again, this is one of those early lines of defense. So if you think of your body, the skin is amazing and it's very protective, right? If we don't have any open wounds, open cuts that could let something into our bloodstream, a virus or a bacteria isn't going to really do much damage if it's on our skin. Now, if we scan our body, there's not too many other openings that stuff can get into except for this area, right? And that's why one of the biggest emphasis during this time especially is, cover your nose, cover your mouth. Don't be wiping your eyes all the time, right? Because if it's on your hand, it's okay. But if you wipe your eyes, it allows that entry in. So if something gets in, and now this early line of defense are those adenoids and tonsils, they start to swell up because what they're doing again is they're trapping the virus or the bug in that area. And what we want to do then is give the body time, because again, it's rushing the blood flow to that area. That's why inflammation happens. So inflammation isn't a bad thing. Inflammation is exactly what the body's trying to do to get a flow there, to get all the immune cells available to start to break it up. Then the next thing that happens is the lymph cells help drain it. I'm sorry, the lymph vessels is what I'm looking for here. Anyway, the lymph is part of the immune system to now drain all that gunk. So if you picture a bunch of bugs and our body surrounds them and it starts to attack them, it starts to kill them off, it needs some place to put all that debris, because bacteria and virus and the immune cells used to kill it, some of the immune cells actually like sacrifice themselves when they kill a virus or a bacteria. So it's kind of picture like the movie Braveheart, where you have all these warriors on the battlefield, and back in that day they just went at it, right? And bodies start to pile up. Well, same in our body when we're fighting off a virus or a bacteria, is those bodies, those cells start to pile up, and that's why now we start to get even more congestion. So the way to support your body in this situation is work with that lymph flow to help it drain. So the most common thing we recommend here is going along the back, the side, and the front of the neck. And when you're helping lymph drain, you're massaging it always toward the heart. The heart, just like pumping blood around, it's going to, in a sense, recirculate some of these things. So if you can allow things to drain towards the heart, it keeps that cycle going instead of just staying congested. Because the more congested it gets, the more uncomfortable it becomes. And I know, like, having a sore throat, obviously that's like one of the worst feelings possible. So some nice lymph drains, you want to go, I like to go from the base of the skull, a little bit into the skull, go down the neck, and all the way into the shoulder, the collarbone here, in the top of the shoulder. So drain in front, back, and you can do that on your kids really gentle a few times a day. If they're really swelled up, is going to support the lymph moving through. Another thing, when we get sick, is we get sleepy, we get moody, right? And this is simply because our immune system uses a ton of energy. And your body here is saying, hey, if you keep pushing yourself, you're going to, in a sense, you're going to go too far, and I'm not going to have the energy to run my immune system. So again, this is not a bad thing. I know we'd love to, do our normal routine when we're starting to get worn down, but our body's saying, hey, get that extra rest. I know for myself, anytime I feel like a little bit of a cold come on, I try to get to bed as early as I can, and I'll shoot for like 10 hours of sleep that night. And what I find is it almost always, for me, like that's the magic bullet. If I'm getting a little run down, I get a good night's sleep, try to get to bed by maybe 8 o'clock. I know it's early for a lot of you guys. Get a good night's sleep, and boom, like it gives all this energy for my body to kick it off, and it's not a big deal. You might be wondering, like, wait a minute, I can't go to bed at 8 o'clock. And I want you to think about this for a moment. If you can get a good night's sleep and kick it off early, it's going to prevent it from going deeper, and now you might take days or a week or two to recover. So yes, it is tough to go to bed early. Yes, I know you have families, I know you have work, I know you have all these other things you want to be doing, but it's worth it because it saves a lot of other time being sick. All right, and then the next piece, we're going to spend a little more time with fevers here. So I'm just going to mention it briefly now, but a fever, again, we might be told that, oh my gosh, we've got a fever, like it's bad. A fever is simply a way for your body to activate the immune system and actually start to decrease how quick a virus or a bacteria can spread. So we're going to go over a sheet in a moment, but basically what we've found is that the intensity of the fever doesn't necessarily mean the intensity of how bad the bug is. So the two main things that a fever does is it actually is like the fire alarm at a fire station. It sounds the alarm. And what happens is when a fever goes off, it tells your whole immune system, like, hey, we've got an invader here. Like, wake up, guys, we got some work to do. Let's go get the job done. Just like in the fire department, if they're sleeping at night, It gets them woken up so they can go fight the fire. The second thing a fever does, which is pretty amazing, is that your body is smart enough to know, depending if it's a virus or a bacteria, what kind it is. It actually creates a fever based on what it needs to fight. And what it knows is that a virus or a bacteria, when it first invades your body, might love that normal body temperature that you have. That's where it can multiply the quickest and the easiest. And what happens is when your body raises the temperature, it says, well, if I can get to 102.5 for this virus, guess what? It can't multiply as quickly. It's kind of an analogy of like boiling water, right? If you're camping and you need to drink some water from the river and you boil it first, it kills off the bugs, it kills off everything to make it safe. Your body, in a sense, has the same mechanism to raise the fever enough to slow down how quick the bacteria or virus can multiply, and then it gives your immune system more time to come in and take over. So I mentioned we're going to go back to that in a moment. The theme then, as you're seeing, of what to do when you get sick, and this is the theme at the top here, is express, don't suppress. So it's so important to remember that your body is doing something for a reason. Your body is wildly smart. The intelligence that is in there is assessing the situation constantly, way more in tune to exactly what's going on than any doctor from the outside is, or any lab test is going to show. And it's constantly assessing the situation, and it's constantly doing exactly what it needs to do, whether it's stuffiness, whether it's a cough, whether it's a fever, whether it's telling you to, hey, go lie in bed for the day. It's telling you what it needs to do to heal. So if you listen to your body and let it express itself rather than suppressing, it's going to help you get through it much more quickly. The other thing it's going to help you do is not only get through it more quickly, but it's going to train your body to learn how to do the even better response next time. So your body needs practice. For example, if every time you see a little fever coming on, you take some Tylenol and you lower it, your body never actually learns the full range of fever that it can use to support itself. I picture it for myself, so I love to golf. Now, if all I did was read a golf magazine or watch a video, but I've never actually swung a club, guess what? I'm not going to get any better at golf. The only way I actually get better is going out there and taking swings. And that's going to work way better than reading 1,000 books. Same for your immune system. If it never gets practice, it doesn't have a chance to get any better. So it's okay to get sick once in a while. One of my colleagues, his dad is a chiropractor as well, and he said, yeah, I find like a lot of people, they get sick, in those seasonal changes, maybe in the fall, maybe this spring. Sometimes they get sick really good. And that's their body just clear stuff out. Like, it's a good detox for the body. All right, so a couple things here. We did talk about sleep before we jump into the next slide. Because your immune system takes a lot of energy, the things on this slide are how can you support your digestive tract in that same mode, because your digestion also takes a lot of energy. That's one of the reasons when you're sick you don't feel like eating much, is because if you put a big steak in your belly when you're sick, your digestion's like, oh, you know how much energy that takes? Your body's trying to spend all that energy on your immune system. It doesn't have the energy to digest a big steak. That's why, like chicken noodle soup, bone broths, teas, those are easy to digest, and they now free up the energy for your immune system to use. The other thing that we really emphasize here, as you can see, is instead of having anything raw, make sure it's cooked, make sure it's steamed, make sure it's warmed up. That keeps your digestion stronger. If you want more of those types of tips, my sister-in-law, Cindy May, she's an amazing acupuncturist here in St. Paul. I did an interview with her previously. That's on our Facebook page, archived in the videos, or on our website. She has some great strategies in this arena that I would let her dive into with you. But support your energy use is the theme there. All right, as I mentioned, I want to spend a little bit more time on fevers, because this is the most common question that I get, is like, well, how high should I let a fever go? Or is it safe to let my child have a fever? Because a lot of parents are like, well, I feel comfortable. They all have their threshold, but then they get really worried if their child starts to go beyond that. And so what this is, and this might be, depending if you're watching on this on a computer or your phone, it might be small. So if you want a copy, just put in the comments that you want a copy, and I can post this in the comments for you to access. But I'll go through it here. So if it is on your phone and it's a little bit small, I'll go through things here. The resources here are on the side. So Dr. Schmidt, he's a professor of pediatrics at the Colorado School of Medicine. He's a director of the Children's Hospital in Colorado. And then some of these are actually from Seattle Children's Hospital on their website. So these resources are from medical professionals who are looking to assess, is the fever safe or not, and what should we do about a fever? So number one of these 6 facts and myths, it says all fevers are bad for children, especially dangerous above 104. And I'm sorry if you can't read that there. It says myth number one. So it says fevers are good, and temperatures, this is going to sound weird. It says temperatures above 108 is something that can cause brain damage. So incredibly high, because I'm actually going to skip down. Number 3, it says without treatment, fevers will keep going higher. So that's also a myth, and I'm going to mix these two. But basically it says fevers are rarely going to go above 105 or 106. And again, I know that sounds like crazy high, but it says while these are high fevers, they are also helpful. So you might be thinking like, wait a minute, you're telling me I'm supposed to let my children's fever go up to 106? What about a seizure? What about brain damage? So here's the other thing they emphasize, is that one, if there is a seizure with a fever, because this is again like the most common, aside from like seeing your child suffer, which we don't like to do, the biggest concern is, well, is a fever that leads to a seizure going to cause brain damage? And the answer, fortunately, is no. So they say here that it's very rare, like less than 4% of children have a seizure with a fever, but it doesn't cause any permanent harm nor increase the risk for things like speech delays, learning problems, or future seizures. Yes, and I see the comment there. So to answer your question, yes. And Tricina, maybe I'm saying that right. I won't try guessing. Anyway, yes, I'll post it. And number 2, this is not only for a child, it's for adults and children. So it applies to everyone. So what the research found is that this was back in the 80s, and there's in the journal Pediatrics, what happened is a bunch of pediatricians got together and they wanted to see, okay, if my child gets a fever and they have a seizure, number 1, is it bad? And number 2, like, what's actually causing it? And originally they thought that the fever was going so high that it was actually like causing damage in the brain, leading to a seizure. Well, what they found is that the immune system, depending on what it's doing, can actually use a lot of calcium. And if the immune system's been going strong for a while and it depletes the body of calcium, that then starts to cause the muscles to go into a seizure. Because just like if you think of, maybe you've done a race on a 90-degree day and you're outside and you're sweating, and your muscles cramp afterwards because they were depleted of electrolytes, it's a similar idea in the body. That if the electrolytes, especially calcium, get too low, that's actually what can trigger the seizure. And it's not having anything to do with brain damage or neurological concern. So that's why they say seizures with fever are harmful is a myth, because it's based on that instead. And it's also one of the reasons why the electrolytes and fluids are so important if you or your kiddo are sick, is because that's going to help prevent this from happening. That's one of the reasons that we love bone broth in our home. If one of us is fighting something, because bone broth gets the minerals from the bone itself, including calcium, so it helps keep our body boosted. Let me see the other, if we want to mention any of these. I think some of these we mentioned. So number 5, it says that the body's normal temperature is always changing throughout the day. And I was actually listening to something recently on brain development and brain health, and they said up to like 2 degrees your body's temperature can vary throughout the day. So that's another thing, is if you're worried about assessing for fever, like make sure you have a good baseline on yourself or your child. Maybe take a temperature throughout the day, so then you know, like, oh, I actually normally, because it says here that it's natural to peak in that late afternoon or evening. So what you might think is a low grade fever might just be the natural fluctuation of you or your child's temperature. And then the last piece we did talk about, it says myth number 6 is that if the fever is high, the cause is serious. And again, that's not true. Yeah, I think that's all I want to emphasize there. So it just says that the fever is going to do, it might go high based on what that virus or bacteria needs to do to be able to contain it. So hopefully that's helpful with fevers and giving you some confidence to let them run their course. And as I said, I know it's not easy. And we just recently, so my son, as I mentioned, is 4 months, so he hasn't had a whole lot of immune system challenges yet. His immune system is obviously still super mature, so it's developing a lot. But the one example I will share as a parent is when he was born, he had a tongue tie, and so we had to do a revision. And at his age, they don't do any numbing agents. They just go in and they open up the tongue tie with a laser, and the poor guy was in so much pain afterward. Like, we held him and snuggled him, and he was crying for a good day, maybe even, the sensitivity lasted over several days, but especially that first day, like, poor guy was just in so much pain. And it was really tough as a parent to decide, like, hey, do we give him some Tylenol to drop the pain, or do we just snuggle him and love him and hug on him and help him get through it as quick as possible? And we chose not to give him anything to suppress the pain, especially Tylenol, because one, it would interfere if his body was, sometimes the body does, when there is even something like that, it creates inflammation and creates a little fever to help activate the immune cells, because even though it wasn't a bug or a virus, that cut needs to be repaired similarly, so his body's going to activate a similar response. So we didn't want to numb or dull any response his body was trying to do to heal naturally. And then 2, Tylenol, as an example, inhibits glutathione production, which, if you haven't heard of, is a really big antioxidant that helps clear out debris and helps clear their free radicals, is what they're called, basically damaged cells in the body. So we didn't want to inhibit something that would actually help his body heal. So I share that not because we've had to snuggle him through a really high fever yet, but it's something that we chose to do as a parent, that, like, we would love to help him just get over his pain really quick. We also wanted to strengthen his body to heal naturally and heal quickly and completely at 100%. All right. Now, before then we go into point number 3, which are some more strategies to strengthen your immune system naturally, I did want to give here now, like, a real world example of what happens when you can let the body express fever and cough, or the examples here. So this is actually now 100 years ago, just over 100 years ago, there was the Spanish flu epidemic of 1917 and 18. And this was something that actually killed millions. And it was, quite the epidemic of the time. And I'll share a few stats to you here. One, to emphasize how expressing helps your body get through something like this. And number 2, kind of going back to the strength of chiropractic. So here was an example in the state of Iowa. You can see the number of cases in the medical realm versus the chiropractic realm. In the medical realm, this flu was so powerful that 1 in 15 people in Iowa who got the flu went into the medical system, they died. And the amazing thing was, chiropractors, because there was, like, so many going around, the hospitals were flooded, chiropractors treated a lot as well. And so of the thousands that chiropractors treated in Iowa, only 1 in 789 died. I'm going to go through a few stats here throughout the country, and this is not to say, like, the medical system's wrong or bad or anything. It's just to give a contrast of the approaches. So here we jump to New York City, and this is just comparing the medical model to a drugless model, and you can see that in the case of influenza, 950 out of 10,000 died, versus in the drugless model, only 25 did. And then those with pneumonia, here's like a huge contrast. That's 64%, 6,400 out of 10,000 died. And in, oh, I'm sorry, I forgot to switch, I think, cases and deaths. So there were 10,000 cases in both situations. And then underneath that is the number of deaths. So I mislabeled the slide there. I apologize for that. But so ultimately what that should say is the medical methods, there was 6,400 deaths out of 10,000 versus in the drugless methods for pneumonia, only 100 deaths out of 10,000. They jumped to Oklahoma, and there was actually, they had a couple hundred cases where the medical doctors had given up hope. They're like, these patients, they're going to pass away. And chiropractors actually saved all but 25. And ultimately, they show the national figures out of the 46,000 patients treated with chiropractic during this time. There was a loss of only 1 out of 886. So pretty amazing stats. And the reason for this is, as I've kind of the theme here, it's like, yes, it's about chiropractic, and it's also about not chiropractic. So the combo is, yes, chiropractic is huge to strengthen the body's natural ability to fight anything off. Number one. Number two, what they found commonly through this is that the medical model focused on suppressing the symptoms. So if you went to the medical doctor, if you went to the hospital with a fever and a cough, they would give you something to lower your fever and something to suppress your cough. Ultimately, what that did is kept the flu in longer. Versus in the drugless model or the chiropractic model, they said, no, you're not going to take any of those things. We're going to let your fever, it might go really high, but we're going to let it burn things out. That cough, I know it's really annoying, but you're going to cough away because you're going to get it out of your body. And that's the other big piece, is that they found that expression, allowing the body to express itself, got through things. And just seen that other comment come in. Yeah, I know that is frustrating with medications as the straightaway recommendation. And I think part of the concern, being in the healthcare field for a while now, over a decade, and I think part of the reason for all the safety precautions happening right now is that, unfortunately, like, malpractice is a big deal. So if a doctor is worried about getting sued, they got to go straight to like, oh, do this, do this, do this. And in a sense, it might cover their malpractice policy even more than being in the best interest of the patient. All right, so that's the theme, you guys, is if you are sick, ask the question, what is my body doing? What is my body trying to do to clear things out naturally? And what can I do, not, unfortunately, to make myself feel better right away or make my child feel better as quick as possible, but what can I actually do to support their body in expressing itself to get through things quickly? All right, so now we're going to jump into the last point for tonight. Point number 3 is how you can strengthen your immune system naturally. Now, the theme for this one, and I want you to think about this for a moment, is why do we get sick more in the winter, more during holidays? And this is going to kind of backtrack to some of the previous points and tie them in as we move forward here. As far as I know, and again, this one might be more of my theory, but I'm happy if you have other things out here that would help give me some insight around this. But as far as I know, viruses and bacteria don't do as well in the cold, right? They want to get in our body because the temperature of our body is what they thrive on. If you want to prevent your food from spoiling, we talked about fruit flies earlier, but what do you do with your food to prevent it from spoiling? You put it in the fridge, right? Because cold slows down those viruses or the bacteria from spoiling your food, right? And if you really want to prevent it from spoiling, you do what? You put it in the freezer, right? Because now it's even colder. So I want you to think about this for a moment. In the wintertime, what is it like outside? Cold, right? Way colder than any time of the year. So why do we get sick more often in the wintertime? Is, to my understanding, it's not because all of a sudden the viruses and bacteria out there like, sweet, it's wintertime, we're going to go have a party and we're going to multiply and we're going to grow and expand and just go like invade all the homes because we're so strong in the wintertime. It's because in the wintertime, our body spends a lot more energy staying warm. That's number one. Number two is our body, especially if you think about going into the transition season here, is you got back to school in the fall, you kind of start to recover from that. And then all of a sudden, in a normal year, we have Thanksgiving, we've got holiday parties, we've got Christmas, we've got New Year's. With that comes travel, different foods, different sleep routines. Tends to be things more sugars, more alcohols, more of kind of the party foods, right? The fun foods this time of year. So the reason we're getting sick more often in the winter is because of this amount of extra stress on our body and the amount of energy our body has to spend taking care of all those other things. And we'll go into the nervous system here a little bit as we tie things together. But ultimately, one of the biggest factors to keeping your immune system strong naturally is looking at how we're handling stress. And I'm going to go into the top 3 things to help your brain handle stress better, because that's what stress impacts, is this balance here in the nervous system. That's what this slide shows, is that when we're under stress, it pulls away from the things that nourish and heal our body. So when we're under stress, the thing that gets robbed are the things, it's this brake pedal thing, and I'm pointing to my screen. You probably can't see me pointing here, but anyway, it says, again, if you're on a computer, you can probably read it well, is the brake pedal side of things. What helps us rest, what helps us digest our food, what helps us relax, what helps us grow and develop. Now, if we're under stress, all those things go down, and our body's spending all the energy dealing with stress. Now, the interesting thing, as a side note here, is that stress right away, it actually activates our immune system, because what is happening in our body is it's saying, well, wait a minute, a stress response is occurring, meaning we might be getting chased by a tiger right now. We might have some sort of damage happening, and our immune system is going to help us like clear that out. So the interesting thing, counter to what a lot of people think, is that when stress first hits, it activates our immune system. So what's most damaging then is not a short burst of stress, but instead stress that goes up and it stays up. Because now, if stress stays up, pretty soon we start to get tired, we start to get run down, and now our immune system starts to drop, because our immune system says, okay, cool, we got stress, we're going to activate, we're going to be ready for whatever injury we get to help heal as quick as possible. And then what happens is, wait a minute, immune system is saying, I'm not getting used, but I'm getting used up, and it starts to collapse and get burnt out. So the biggest factor is not short-term stress, but instead chronic stress. And so here was a study that they found, and that, all right, so the reason I mentioned chronic stress is that we think, well, maybe it takes months or years to add up, but chronic means anything more than a short moment. See, our stress response is designed to run from a tiger, which is like a short-term thing, right? Hopefully a few minutes we've gotten away somehow, right? Or we've fight, flight, we've fought and got our way through it and survived. Now we can go rest and recover. However, if we're under chronic stress, that doesn't happen. And chronic, what they found here, they studied students in a master's, they're getting their master's degree. And what they found is that every year they would study them during a 3-day exam period. And simply that 3-day exam period started to drop their immunity pretty significantly. And you can see some of the effects there. But ultimately, their immune system started to respond only weakly if it was stimulated by a bug. And so that's only 3 days of a stress. And below you see there's 300 studies. What they found is that whether it's a few days, months, years, that all aspects of immunity started to go downhill. So their quote is that this long-term, this chronic stress can actually ravage the immune system. What that means then is one of the top things you can do to help your body handle strengthen your immune system is to handle stress better. This is, if we reverse tape back to the very beginning, I'll actually reverse this way. If we reverse to the beginning, point number 1 is that you can shove a cold virus directly in someone's nose. Some get sick, some don't. It's based on, as we talked about, the strength of the immune system, which the strength of the immune system is one of the key factors, and that's why I'm emphasizing this, is based on how well your body's handling stress. Because what happens is stress creates that fight or flight response, which means in the moment, your body's perceiving something as so dangerous, it's got to focus all its energy there and put everything else aside. That's why when we're under stress, our digestion doesn't go as well. Our sleep doesn't go as well. Our immune system over time, even within a few days, starts to drop down because our body's saying, I need to worry about that stress for survival. If I don't survive, if I don't get away from that tiger, guess what? All those other things don't matter. So that's why chronic stress depletes our energy reserves, and pretty soon now the bugs that we do get encountered, the bugs that do enter our system have a chance to do some havoc. All right, so what then are your priorities if you want to help your body handle stress better? And as I mentioned earlier, what we're going to do is a little bit out of the box, because most people, again, when you think of immune system, the most common thing I hear is just worry about what you're eating. And yes, that's important, but guess what? It's actually number 3 on the list. So this is from a chiropractic neurologist that is amazingly smart with brain development and brain health that I love to learn from, Dr. Michael Hall. And he says the priorities for brain health. And why are we doing brain health? Because your brain, your nervous system are what respond to your stress. And if your nervous system's strong, you handle stress better. That's one of the reasons that neurological chiropractic helps you handle stress better and boost your immune system as a result. So anyway, priority number 1 is actually social. We're going to go into this in a moment. What does that mean? But social engagement is the best thing you can do for your brain. And if it's the best thing that you can do for your brain, it's one of the top things that's going to help your immune system. Number 2 is movement. And as I said before, number 3, what a lot of us think when it comes to immune system is actually number 1, but it's number 3, is nutrition. So I want to give you some emphasis on each one of these and some strategies within social, movement, and nutrition. All right, so social, what this is our engagement with other people. And unfortunately right now, this is one of the things that's taking the biggest hit, whether it's our kids not being in school engaging with others and being online learning, or it's us working from home instead of going to the office and interacting with other people. Maybe it's your girlfriends that you used to do walks with on a regular basis and now they're quarantined at home. Maybe it's the family get-togethers that we would have had with Thanksgiving or that we would have with Christmas or New Year's. Now we're not getting together with family members. It's one of the biggest things that's taking a hit right now, which is tough not only on our mental health, but it's going to be tough on our nervous system and our immune system as well. So social engagement, the reason this is so important is that as humans, we have a really big frontal brain, right? That's what we have, bigger than any other animal out there. It helps us to be as smart as we are. It helps us to do all these amazing things that the human mind can do. And this part of the brain and the cortex I'll say some of the back cortex as well, the parietal cortex, receives all the sensory input from our fine motor skills. So when we're communicating, when we're socializing with people, as you can see, what I'm doing right now is I'm not just sitting here being a robot. I'm like getting my whole mannerisms into it. I'm using my hands, which have a ton of input into the brain. I'm using my mouth, and when I'm socializing with someone else, my eyes are picking up on all their little gestures. So all these little movements of our mouth and our face and our eyes, our mannerisms, right, with socializing, 55% of our communication is through these gestures. 38% is the tone, only 7% is the words we use. So 55% of socialization is through all these little micro expressions and micro gestures, and that's driving incredible input into our brain. That's why social is number one, not only because of all the input it drives into our brain, but because when we communicate with other human beings, it creates an emotional connection as well, right? So we have our mind and our heart. They've got to be both not only sync together, but both getting love and attention, right? So when you socialize with someone, you're getting to talk about a tough situation. You're able to get some of that stress off your chest. You're able to receive feedback. You're able to receive praise and appreciation and love. That's like what drives the human spirit, the soul in our body, is that love and appreciation. So that's one of the reasons why social is number one, right? You might know someone that maybe they don't get outside and move that much. Maybe they don't eat that well, but they have a really good social network. And guess what? They're pretty happy. They do pretty well. They stay pretty healthy in life. And so what this shows, again, from the American Psychology Association, is this was part of when they reviewed the 300 different studies. They were looking at the stress piece and the social piece. And what they summarize is that the immune response was most weakened by the combination of loneliness and small social networks, which is, again, right now, like what is getting hit more than ever before in our society is what? Loneliness and small social networks. So the good news is what they found is that even just a few close friendships can help someone feel connected and stay strong and actually buffer the negativity, all these negative events. So having just a few close friends, someone that you can talk with on a weekly basis. The weekly piece is one of the important pieces that Dr. Hall teaches for that connection. Obviously, if you're in person, it's better. You get a little more of that warmth and connection. The phone's okay. Zoom's okay. In person is one of the best ways you can do it. Anyway, this is going to help strengthen your brain, strengthen your immune system, and keep you strong and resilient this year. So this is really a big emphasis right now, is if you've seen those social ties lag back, if you've seen some of your connections start to go away, is really make an effort. This will be the number one thing you can do to boost your immune system right now, is actually go out and make more social connections. All right, number 2 is movement. Here again, the brain has a ton of wiring for movement. That's one of the reasons when we're upright, we're moving around on 2 legs, it drives a ton of information into the brain that, again, other animals don't have nearly the amount of brain volume used that we do. So one study here found that being fit and active could cut the risk of having a cold by nearly 50%. And if you do have a cold, because part of the theme here is getting over it more quickly, that if you're active, the severity of symptoms felt 41% less of by those who felt the fittest. And I think instead of feel, anyway, I think I worded that wrong, but it means the severity of symptoms 41% less by those who were the fittest. And the nice thing here, when they looked at what it took to drop your chance of having a cold by 50%, is that you only needed 20 minutes of movement at a time. If you can get intense enough to break a little sweat, so that could even be a brisk walk, just getting that heart rate up and getting that movement 20 minutes at a time was able to drop your risk for a cold by 50%. And it did have to be pretty frequent. So they mentioned like 5 days a week. If you can't get it in that often, again, the more the better. So movement is what they find is it gives the immune system actually a little boost. As you can see on the bottom there, it actually increased the amount of the cells that help the immune system circulating around. Here again, if we look at all the extra time we're doing with computers right now, and just the change in lifestyle with everything, movement is the other piece that's taken a huge hit, right? So I think this is one of the reasons why so many people are saying, hey, what can I do to armor up my immune system this winter? Is because they can sense like, something's a little off here. So there's a family that we see, and mom and I had a conversation the other day for her and her 2 daughters, and we are trying to figure out like, okay, what's been a little bit different? And she's like, oh, this movement was actually the big thing that she had a realization around is my daughters aren't getting as much movement as they used to. So she re-emphasized getting outside, playing, getting full body movement. We talked about with her daughters, because they're younger, like crawling around on the ground, going down slides, playing on the jungle gym, things that get the whole body moving, really engage the brain in a full way. And so that full body movement, she said, okay, that's the one thing that I'm going to re-up and re-emphasize for our family right now to get us strong going into the winter. All right, so then number 3. And what I want to do here, so we've covered social, movement, now we're going into nutrition. What I want to do here is not say, hey, here's the top foods to boost your immune system. Guess what? Garlic's good, vitamin C is good, vitamin D is good, lots of water is good. 1, because you probably know all that. 2, if you don't know it, just go on Google right now, Google top foods to boost your immune system, and guess what? They're going to be pretty accurate, as I mentioned earlier. So with nutrition, what I want to cover as we're getting near the end here tonight is what are some of the situations that I see that I get the most questions around, and how can you then learn from these scenarios to empower you to make better choices yourself and not have to rely on a health expert to ask every time you see something or you have a question. So number 1 is that there's not a magic supplement that works for everyone. A lot of people in our office, because we don't specialize in supplements in our office, we actually don't sell any supplements. All we focus on is the neurological chiropractic, because we like to get really good in that lane. People ask us, so they say, hey, what would you recommend if this is going on? And should I take this supplement? Should I take that supplement? And what I've seen over and over again in the years that I've been in practice is there's not one supplement that's good for everyone. So we have different providers, for example, that do muscle testing or blood work or hair and saliva testing to actually test your individual body or your child's body to see what is good for them. For example, there was a couple that saw us who had adrenal fatigue. And they, instead of saying, oh, adrenal fatigue, let me look up supplements for adrenal fatigue, they got tested. And it turned out they each needed a different combination of supplements to support their body. When they were taking those, their adrenals did well and they felt really energized. One day, the wife ran out, so she didn't have any of her supplements, so she took her husband's. And guess what happened? Even though it was a supplement for adrenal fatigue and she had adrenal fatigue, when she took her husband's, it didn't make her feel any better. It actually, she felt the same. It didn't work for her because it wasn't specific for her body. Once she got back on what she was specifically tested for, now she did great. And so that's the biggest thing I would emphasize. If you need to get like an answer of, hey, should I take this? Is you really want to do something specific to your body. Even when my wife was working on milk production for our son Mason a few months ago, she called up a practitioner, and we have, pretty good resource of practitioners in this realm because that like kids and families and birth and babies, and it's like what we love to do. So we have a great network. So we called around to some of the people that we love working with, and she said, hey, I'm looking for some things I could take to boost my milk production. And one lady's like, oh, you should take fenugreek. Everyone does really well. It's like one of the safest things that you can take, so I'd recommend that. She, okay, great. A little bit later, she's talking to another one. Hey, what should I do to boost my milk production? And this lady's like, oh, one of the things that I don't recommend is fenugreek. because I've just had mixed variables. Some people, they do well and others don't. So here's an example. She got two like completely conflicting answers. So the question became, hey, let's test your body for fenugreek and see if you like it. We got her body tested, and it turned out her body didn't like it. Even though some women do amazing on it, her body specifically wasn't going to do well on it. So point number one, if you are looking for something as a supplement, get tested for it. And if you do find something that works for your body, do make sure it's a good quality one. For example, some people say like, oh, I take my multivitamin that I get at Walgreens. If it's cheap and from just like a general store like that, odds are your body can't use it as well as it could be. So when it comes to vitamins and minerals and supplements, you want more of a whole food form rather than a synthetic form, because a synthetic form most just passes through your body anyway. All right. And then the next piece when it comes to nutrition, the other common question that I get is like, hey, have you heard about this magic juice? It comes from the Amazon jungle, and there's one plant that makes it. And apparently, if you drink that juice, it keeps you healthy forever, right? And we've all heard of these different ones that come out, and there's this one, and then the next year there's a new one, and a new one, and a new one. And what I've found after looking at these for quite a while is that there's a common, not necessarily a one ingredient, but a common theme that they all have as to why they work. So in these so-called magic elixirs, the common theme that they have is a lot of antioxidants. And it's not necessarily that's the one magic fruit, because my guess is if you go to the Amazon or maybe go somewhere in South America, they probably have some magic fruit that's only grown in the United States. That's super rare and super hard to find, that just because it doesn't grow down there. So that's the one they bring down there, and we bring theirs up here. Anyway, it's not necessarily like this hard to find thing that we have to go to another country to get. The common theme amongst all these is that they have a ton of antioxidants. So in our body, we need carbs, fats, proteins, we need vitamins, we need minerals, right? And there's a pretty specific list of the amount of vitamins and minerals. It's not super long, so we can kind of go through and say, hey, do you have enough vitamin D? Do you have enough vitamin C? Because yes, those are really good for the immune system. If you're under a lot of stress, the B vitamins are really good to help your body handle stress better, right? So you can go through and kind of checklist all those. What you can't go through and checklist are this theme called antioxidants. What antioxidants are is when we are under stress, our body, the cells in our body end up, the stress causes free radicals that damage our cells. And if a lot of our cells start to get damaged from free radicals, that weakens our body. It makes us more susceptible to get sick. It makes us more susceptible for things like heart disease and cancer. One of the things, like if blood sugar is out of control for, say, a diabetic, and that blood sugar is out of control, that actually creates free radicals. That's why they get like neuropathy, peripheral neuropathy, things. It's like cell damage from these free radicals. So you might have someone who's diabetic, and they say, hey, I just found this great elixir. It's this magical juice from the Amazon. I started drinking it, and guess what? I feel great again. Why? Is because these antioxidants help heal from free radicals, from those damaged cells. Now, the reason antioxidants, you can't just say, okay, well, here's the list of vitamins and minerals, and I know to take those. Give me the list of antioxidants. Let me take those, and then I'll be good to go. The thing with antioxidants, they're found in all different foods, but especially fruits and vegetables. But there's thousands and thousands and thousands of them. And every time you go, and if you look up antioxidants, you'll find a scientist saying, science has yet to discover all the antioxidants out there. There's, for example, one category of antioxidants, flavonoids is one of the categories. There's 4,000 of just that one that have been discovered in just one category of many categories of antioxidants. So the reason that these magical elixirs work, as far as that I've seen so far, is that they're super dense in antioxidants. So some of the things we like to do in our house are berries. So we can get them more locally, obviously in the summertime, not necessarily in the winter here, but blueberries, strawberries, blackberries, raspberries, berries, super potent in antioxidants. So they help keep our cells healthy and help keep our immune system healthy. Sometimes if we wanted a more concentrated version of that, maybe we would do some juice like blueberry juice, cherry juice. Pomegranate is another one that's super dense with antioxidants. And one it's a brain scientist that I follow a little bit. He says like one of the most important things is eating more locally. So when you go now into the winter season here, we say, okay, what else can we eat that might be high in antioxidants? Anything that has more color to it. So like sweet potatoes are going to have more antioxidants than regular potatoes because they have that rich color. Cruciferous veggies, again, maybe not growing right now, but they're a little more closer to the winter time, like broccoli, kale, Brussels sprouts. Those are really rich in antioxidants. Generally, fruits and veggies have more, so that's why getting those more than your grains or your meats are going to help your body. With that being said, then the theme here is don't isolate. Don't say, okay, I need this one magic potion, and as long as I take that, I'm going to be good to go. But eat a variety, because the variety of fruits and veggies with different colors, that's one of the best ways you can get a variety of antioxidants amongst all of them out there, is eat different colors on a regular basis. That helps cover all your bases. All right, so we're going to wrap up here. And to summarize then, the three things that we talked about. Number one is the biggest factor of why some people get sick and others don't is not because some people are better at avoiding the bug than others. It's because their body itself is built up stronger. If you do get sick, point number two, because we all get sick once in a while, and you want to get through it more quickly and build your body up to get stronger for next time, or same for your child's body, even though it's uncomfortable, is to let your body express, don't suppress. Always ask the question, is this supporting what my body's already trying to do? And number three, to help your brain handle stress better, we want to feed the brain with what it's wired for. So in order of importance, number one, social connection. Go out there, reconnect with your lost friends. Really make an effort right now to get back together, socialize, build those bonds, build those connections. Number two, get movement. Only has to be 20 minutes at a time. Doesn't have to be an hour-long workout. And number three, with nutrition, don't worry about the magic thing. Just get a variety of fruits and veggies. That's going to cover your bases better than anything else. And know that when you're working on nutrition, you go back there. There's not a magic supplement for everyone. So instead of saying, hey, my friend took that, find someone to get you tested for it. All right. And then the last piece that I've mentioned, I've tied in throughout here, but that I don't want to overlook either, is that what we love doing in our office is supporting you and your family in handling stress better. That's what we see over and over and over again, is our adjustments help your brain clear out stress. It helps get out of that fight or flight, activate the brake pedal, which slows things down, helps the stress move through the body. And this is what we see over and over and over again in our office. We actually, I've got a couple pages of testimonials of how chiropractic has boosted the immune system of our practice members. And this is something like we stopped like keeping track of years ago, because we're like, well, we got like 4 pages of testimonials on this, of how much better families were doing under chiropractic care, even if that's not why they came in. So I don't want to overlook this either. If you are in our office already, awesome. Make sure you stay with your appointments this year, because it's going to make a huge difference. And if you aren't under chiropractic care, if you're in the Twin Cities, we'd love to check you out. If you're outside of the Twin Cities, give us a ping and we'll find someone locally who can help you out. But it's going to make a huge, huge difference for you this winter as well. All right. So if you need support, reach out. And if not, thank you so much for connecting tonight. I appreciate the time to be able to share something that I'm passionate about, because I know I want my family to be as healthy as possible, and I want to support your family in being as healthy as possible too. So thanks again for connecting, and if you have questions too, feel free to reach out, put it in the comments, give us a call, or you can email us, and we're happy to help.